And here we are again for another episode of Motivation and Money with myself, Mark Terrell, and my co-host Fanny Snaith. How are you today, Fanny?
Sally.
Sanny. I think I said Sanny. Anyway.
Sally, good name. I've been called that one before. I'm very well, thank you. I'm very well.
Good. I can tell you that she's in a dancey mood because she's been dancing along to the intro music, so lots of energy there. Are you standing up, Fanny?
Yeah.
She's standing up. She's standing up. Yeah, I'm not. Anyway, what are we here today? Oh, this is one of the, you might have guessed, a topic that Fanny's brought into the mix, and that is how do we stay motivated to pay attention to our money. And I think it's really important, actually. Sometimes we only pay attention to money when we have to do things as opposed to having a plan around it. So I'm looking forward to this because I'm bound to learn something around why I should be maybe a bit more conscious around the way I act around my money and do things with money. So Fanny, I am going to hand over to you to frame what we're going to talk about today.
Well, you said I'm going to change one word, or I'm going to offer an alternative word in the title. You said to stay motivated.
Stay, okay.
What about if we were to introduce to get motivated?
Good start, yeah.
I'll start with I was in Tesco's this morning buying some frozen sprouts. Just thought you
frozen sprouts. What, in August? Wow. Okay.
I eat sprouts all the time. I love sprouts. But anyway, and I was talking to the lady on the till, and she was mentioning something about, I don't know quite where it came from, but she said, is it too early to start buying cushions as a gift for Christmas? Right? And I said, my initial reaction was, oh my God, yes, Christmas. Oh, right. That was my first reaction, which was just a natural, God, why do people start doing Christmas in the shops? But let's think about that. And you might think, what on earth am I going with this? But just bear with, right? So if we do think about something like Christmas, which is supposed to be a really joyous, lovely occasion, but the problem is many of us get bogged down in it because one, Christmas starts in August, as it seems to be in Tesco's. They're sort of it's starting to feed in August. And then it sort of starts, for many people, it puts the pressure on them that they've now got the whole thing of Christmas coming up, which for so many people is a financial burden. So we have a chap in our networking meeting, which we'll not mention any names. Oh, let's mention names. Matt Richardson, right? Who absolutely loves Christmas. He loves everything about Christmas, doesn't he? And it's always a really light and joyous conversation with him. But honestly, how many people do you really know like that? He's probably the only one for me.
That's why we remember it, isn't it? Because you mention it so often and he's like that. We don't find that many people are so positive around it, not of our age anyway.
Right. So then going back to this lady in Tesco's, and I said, well, of course, because we've been saving for Christmas since January this year, of course it's not too early to buy a cushion that you see for somebody as a gift, because the money is sitting there, which means that you know how much money you're going to have to spend, and you can spend it with joy. And she went, oh, well, yeah, if I'd been doing that, but I haven't. So if we're looking at a reason as to why to either stay motivated or even to get motivated, I think that is sort of like the crux of it. Because anything that we approach, whether it be our fitness, our health, our money, what else can I think of like that? Anything, I suppose, that comes from the sort of self-wealth perspective, I think, the more that we think about it, approach it on the front foot rather than on the back foot, is got to make it a more pleasurable experience, and will give us more choices and will make us feel as if we've got more abundance around the situation.
So, yeah. Otherwise, I mean, I'm just going to link into, because I used to be in retail, so we used to have Not towards the latter days, but we used to have for quite a number of years Christmas savings club. So they'd buy a certain amount of stamps back in the day before the technology took over. And then once they got, I think it's 19 stamps, we gave them the 20th. And so there was an incentive there to build
Perfect.
up. But those people that came in and spent them, there was almost like this, so excited to spend this money that's not actually, they don't feel as if it's their money. It's almost like I can spend this on whatever I like. I'm not going to feel guilty about it. So
Yeah.
that's an interesting scenario. From linking back to what your the person that you were speaking to this morning was talking about with regards to
Yeah.
being too early. And
So if you want, so let's call a spade here, right? If you're sitting there and you're going, I don't manage my money, I just, what comes in, what goes out, and I don't care, I don't feel anything about it, I don't feel like I need to do any more, nothing bothers me about it, then you might as well go away now, because this show is not for you, right? This program's not for you. But if for any reason you're sitting there thinking, God, I really wish I was able to do this better, or I wish I had more to show for my salary that comes in, but I just can't seem to get going, then let's try and find out what the root of it is as to why you can't get going, and try and help you to move away from that. Because I know that it's all very well me saying, well, if you've been putting money away for Christmas since January, it'll all feel fine. But the whole point is that for many people, or some people, many people, that's what they find difficult. It's the difficulty of maybe setting the goal to try and start something at the beginning of the year, or do something early, because there's that feeling of sense of avoidance. So how do you get into the frame whereby you can start managing your money on a day-to-day, week by week, month by month, year by year, decade by decade basis?
well, what I've just thought actually, it's like leadership in many respects, because leadership is dependent on having a vision. You can't lead anybody unless you've got a vision. So it's the same with regards to what you've described. Unless you've got a clear vision as to what you actually want, then it's never really going to happen, is it? It's going to be something that, I'll try to do it, but I'm not sure I will be able to. And I think with how things have been the last 12 months or so with regards to, the doom and gloom with regards to the economy and the prices going up and all that sort of stuff, people probably have talked themselves out about whether they can actually put money aside for Christmas. And so, they put it
But
on. It's
Christmas is still
almost
going to
like,
happen.
well, I'll hopefully have some money when it comes to Christmas. But obviously, again, that doesn't really help the situation, because when it comes to Christmas, if you haven't got any money, what do you do about Christmas? You can't really ignore it, can you?
Christmas is still going to happen. So let's go back a little bit to more of the basics. Let's set Christmas aside for a moment and think about the person, if you are this kind of person that just goes, especially for those, I think it's even harder for people who are on a salary, who have a job, as it were, because to all intents and purposes, you go to work, you don't really have to think about what you're earning. The salary goes into your bank account at the end of every month, and then you just work from that. Whereas for us who are self-employed, we're thinking about overhead expenses, costs, how much we actually get per client, and all that, and all that kind of stuff. It's a very different way of working. So to a certain extent, we're holding our feet to the fire a little bit closer than we would if we were salaried. I think it's very easy for people who are salaried to shove money away even more than others.
Yep.
So let's say, for instance, you're sitting there going, right, next year I really want to start managing my money better. And then somebody goes, well, let's set some goals. Oh no, I don't like goals. Because this is one of the things, I used to have this, where as soon as anybody mentioned the goal word, I'd be like, but let's dig into that a little bit further. What's that all about? Why is it that you don't like setting goals? I mean, is it that you've got maybe a fear of failure, that you're not going to be able to meet that goal, so you don't bother with it right in the first place?
Yep.
Maybe you've got so some perceived limitations. You've got the feeling that you haven't got the self-worth or the self-esteem or whatever, that you can reach it. Maybe you've got some kind of anxiety towards commitment. You know, people have anxiety towards commitment of all sorts of things, relationships or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there are social pressures that are stopping you make goals. Maybe you just feel completely overwhelmed because maybe you think that once you're setting a goal, you're going to have to put all these different things in place and it's all going to get terribly complicated. So you get overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you're just thinking about your past experiences when it comes to goals. There are so many reasons: perfectionism, being too vague, all that kind of stuff, or lack of autonomy, that you can't do sort of some feel that you can do things on your own. So
Mm-hmm.
that if that's the first step, deal with the first step.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm in the work that I do with people, we take things back, really right back to the root of within themselves, to say, why can't you start? Because starting is the first thing. Then obviously, if you can get started with one small thing, so I might say, okay, so we start with putting 5p in a jar every day and looking at your bank statements once a day. Do that for a week or something. And then once you start getting that into consistency, you know, consistently, then you can start building on that and doing something more. So you don't have to suddenly go, you don't have to sit there and go, okay, so I'm going to start managing my money. So I need to work out where I'm going to be when I'm 84 or 55. That might just be too much for you, is to just take something step by step. But it, you know, it may be the first thing for you to do is to really start thinking about your why. You know, why do I want to do this? Why do I want to? Are you thinking about your, you know, what's going to happen in the future when you retire? Or that might be way too scary, and it's probably not on an 18-year-old's, a 16-year-old's radar, whereas it's the best time for it to be on the radar, by the way.
Yeah.
You know, all those things. So your freedom of choices. Do you want to have more choices? You know, is more money going to have, and controlling your money, is it going to reduce your stress? What will managing your money solve for you?
So I've written down a few things that you said there, and I think one of the things that we have to do is make or change our habits in some way to allow these things to happen.
Absolutely.
So when we, relating to something like getting fitter or losing weight, it's not about getting to that goal of weight or whatever it is. It's actually, the more important thing is actually getting into a pattern of eating healthily, or doing exercise regularly, and being a habit. So it's not something you have to keep making yourself do. That's the important thing about motivation. Motivation is the reason that you do something. So you have to link it to something that you really want, as opposed to something that you don't want. So it's got to be something that you're working towards, and that's where, you know, when people start their stuff at the beginning of a year and join the gym and all that sort of stuff, unless they've got a real intention as to the outcome that they want, and that they really know why they want it, that's, if they don't have those things, that's what, you know, people fall off the wagon and don't commit to what they think that they can do. And I think also people overcommit to what they can do realistically. So it's about, again, making it into little chunks of things that you can actually measure and actually see that you're making progress. It's definitely something for me with regards to, talked about the fitness, my zone thing that I get. So I know that I'm making progress, that it might not be apparent, but actually I know that I am making progress towards the goal of being fitter and all that sort of stuff. So I think a lot of this is about habit change, isn't it? And linking it to what you really want with regards to motivation.
And people say to me, my clients say to me, they go, yeah, but it's really hard. And my response generally is, if you commit to something, the only time that commitment's going to be tested is when you don't want to do it. So, and that is when it is hard.
Yeah.
But then weighing up that feeling of success, of actually working through and actually staying with that commitment, or what it feels like to not do it. I'm also a big advocate of being kind to yourself and being compassionate. But there, we do have to have a certain amount of personal discipline and personal responsibility. And
Yeah.
I'm going to do the sort of like the straight talk now. We can all be adults when it comes to money, but it doesn't mean to say that we're grown up.
Mhm.
And actually, when it comes to money, many of us have a lot of growing up to do. Yes, I'm a money coach and yes, I work with people, but I'm not perfect. I've fallen out of love with looking after my money. It's not the most sexy task. The more I think, again, as your wealth grows and things like that, it can become more complicated as well. So,
Mhm.
so therefore, the people that have that subconscious belief that money is a burden, it's a big responsibility. Yes, it gets trickier as you start building wealth, because yes, you do have more of it to manage. You've got to start thinking about what I'm going to do with it and all this kind of thing and how I'm going to manage it best, etc. But
Mhm.
if you're trying to find that motivation to get started, and you're feeling a sense of discomfort or that dis-ease and and unease within
Mhm.
you, a stress, etc., then what will happen if you don't do something about it?
Well, I was going to say that because there's with motivation, there's a motivation towards and away from, and quite often the strongest and most effective motivation is away from, in that I don't want to have that, don't want to be in that position again. So it really makes you do things to avoid having that discomfort that you have or
Yeah,
had. Yeah.
except there is a problem with away from motivation, which
Hmm.
I have encountered on a number of occasions. I have to be,
Hmm.
because my whole ethos around, or my motivation around trying to build my wealth, was an away from motivation,
Hmm.
fear of being broke.
Yeah.
So the problem with that away from is that when you get to a stage where you're not broke, you tend to take your foot off the gas
Right. Okay.
because
Yeah.
you're not there anymore, right?
Yeah, but isn't that? I mean, that motivation is all about that, because motivations will change because your circumstances will change and the things you want in the future will change as your circumstances change. And
Well,
yeah,
but that's the point. You have to change your goal. You
yeah,
have to change your goal, because if not,
yeah,
I mean, there'll be many self-employed people out there, and I've got to put my hand up. I've done it as well, where you go out, you go, right, I've got to go and I'm going to get all these clients in. You go and get all the clients in, you see the money coming in, and then you take your foot off the gas.
yeah.
That's what happened. Then you suddenly go, oh my god, I've got to get loads more clients in. Plus the fact that you actually got to deliver the work and all that kind of thing. But
Mhm.
I think it's a case of, if you're going to think about, so for better for me, or for people in that situation, would be, okay, so I want a turnover of this. My goal is to have a turnover of this per this month, and
Mhm.
then next month I'd like it to be this, or it needs to be this every month. And how am I going to build a plan in order to achieve that every month? Whereas I think that if you just have an away from motivation to say, I don't want to be broke, let's say, which
Yeah,
is quite a strong one in my experience,
yeah.
you do tend to do this roller coaster bit.
That's interesting. Yeah, because
Have you
my experience, the clients I've worked with who have had, so for instance, a strong motivation around money, and
Yeah,
then when we delve a bit deeper, it tends to be an away from.
yeah,
It might be that they've seen their family being in a situation where money was an issue or whatever it might have been. That the problem I've come across is more that they don't know when to stop, and actually actually my job is to say, well, actually, is that the case anymore? Actually, do you need to be running away from this fear of being broke when actually it appears to me that you're actually very wealthy? It's about realizing actually you're more wealthy
yeah.
than you realize in some
I think
respects.
it can. I think it can go both ways. I think.
Hmm.
I think it. I generally. I think that if you if you do an away from motivation like that, it can either be never enough, or for instance, let's look at a dieter with that same kind of thing. I don't want to be this big, so they go and they lose weight, and they get down to their target weight, and then they've got down to their target weight, and then all the good practice that they had in goes away. So again, it's like that reverse thing of taking your foot off the gas.
Yeah, But I
Anyway,
think it's always going back to this. Motivation is a moving target as such, because the things that we're motivated by are affected by three things. They're affected by our past, they're affected by our circumstances, our present circumstances, and they're affected by the things that we are moving towards and things we want in the future. And all those things are moving all the time. So it's really important to understand that motivation is a sort of moving target. So
yeah,
you need to check in with, well, what is really driving me now? And not keep assuming that the things that used to be important to you are still the same. So again, I've seen people that have realised that, and then they've almost gone the opposite way, where they've gone to a point where they're, being very holistic and actually trying to get away from the fact that they were chasing something that almost feels uncomfortable to them now. Whereas the reality is actually there's no good or bad. It's just actually just getting a balance and understanding that where you are as a person now is very much different to where you were when you started your journey, with regards to getting away from that problem that you were trying to address. So,
we think we're talking about some personal situations here, Mark, both of us.
not mine particularly, but
It's mine,
clients.
definitely
I was
mine.
okay.
Definitely
Yeah, well, you
mine.
shared things about, you said at the beginning about goal setting. You didn't seem to like the actual goal setting sort of process, but now you've changed your views on that because you see
I
how
have,
important it is.
but do you know the way I changed my views? And there was the next thing I was going to come to. So if you're going to progress, I think most people would agree that there needs to be some kind of measurement.
Yeah.
So therefore, it needs to have really some kind of goal. But I think sometimes when it comes to money, people start thinking about, well, what am I going to save, or what am I going to do? What am I going to achieve, and all that kind of stuff. Whereas actually, I think it can be, you can start on a different track by actually just maybe making a goal of spending a certain amount of time on your money every day. So you might sign up, let's say, to an app like Money Dashboard, or you might, if you can go into your bank account, you can start tagging things, just start making things in the right category, so you can start working with that data later, which might actually make you think, oh my god, I don't want to be talking about data, I don't want to be talking about adding things up and figures and all this kind of thing. But actually, if you start setting yourself up by doing a pretty innocuous task on it, you're preparing yourself for something later, which will then become an awful lot easier. So, for instance, with my clients, I recommend Money Dashboard, which is a fantastic app, and it's free and blah, blah, blah. And you can start going in and tagging, your purchases. And I mean, one of the biggest demotivators for a lot of people when they come to start managing their finances are things like Amazon, because on every single app, it tends to come up as experiences. Whereas you might be buying your dog food from there, right? Well, it might have been an
Really, is
experience.
that right? I didn't know that.
Every single time it comes up as experiences. Well, it does on Money Dashboard anyway, and
Right.
it doesn't know what you've bought, basically. Whereas
Yeah.
if when you go into Tesco's, you're not going to have bought a Rolex watch. It's pretty much going to be groceries. When you go to Amazon, you could have bought anything, couldn't you, really? So you do actually have to go through those things and actually start looking at what they are if you're going to do breakdown. And that's the best way to put you off if you're starting to manage your finances. When you
Yes.
suddenly see all this stuff as experiences, you go, oh god, what's all that?
Yeah.
Whereas if you just take a short amount of time to work out what it is when you're going through it, just something to get you hooked into a little habit that you can build every day.
Yeah.
Atomic habits. Here we go again. Jeff
Well,
Holst.
and also when people say things like, "Well, it's only a cup of coffee a day" or something like that, it actually
Yes.
makes you realise actually that's not a lot when you think about it. If you say
Well,
coffee, for instance, is £3 a day, and you multiply it by 365, that's £1,000 a year. Not that
yeah,
most people go out for a coffee every day, but it makes you sort of start thinking about actually, if I just change my habits a little bit and not add a coffee, then at the end of the year, I might be maybe not that £1,000 better off, but I might have maybe half of that, which is 500 quid. And what would I do with that £500? That's the thing. Do I have something I
exactly.
want to do with it? Yeah.
Exactly. And I was looking at, the rule of 72. Do you know the rule
No.
of 72? So
No.
the rule of 72 is if you take the number of 72 and then you divide it by the interest, by an interest rate, say you get as a saver.
Mm-hmm.
It will tell you how many years it takes to double your money.
Oh, interesting.
Right. So,
Okay.
for instance, if you get this, I thought was really quite good. Okay, so um, let's say, so the figure works out that roughly, if you get 7%
Yeah.
interest, it'll take you roughly 10 years to double your money.
Yep.
Right. So £1,000 at 7% will compounded without
Yeah.
adding anything extra to it. It'll take 10 years before it's £2,000.
Yeah. Got that.
Right. So the other thing is that you can also then think about these for all the people who leave their money languishing in bank accounts at 0.01% or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
If you think of the same thing, if you were to leave your £1,000 in a bank account earning no money, earning no interest, and inflation was at 7%,
Yep.
it's going to take about 10 years to reduce your money by half.
So working the other way around, yeah.
So work in the other direction.
That's really good, isn't it? I like that. I'm gonna use that. Love it.
Yeah, you can. Yeah. So for instance, I worked out a few years. So if it was 5%, it's 14.4 years. You're at 6%, it's 12 years. Now, what I thought was quite interesting is that we're at a time at the moment where inflation and interest rates are getting quite close.
Yeah.
Right. So I know that now there's 5.8% you can get on a cash ISA. I mean, that's massive compared to what it was a little while back. So if you,
well, it used to be you're lucky to get 0.5%, weren't you?
Seriously. Well, cash ISAs sort of lost their thing because they became pointless because the government increased the amount that you're allowed to earn in interest before you pay tax on it. You can earn £1,000 in interest before you pay tax on it. So cash ISAs sort of became a bit null and void, really, for many people. Yeah. But when you can earn 5.8% and you're feeling a little bit fearful about not investing in stocks and shares, which I understand, and if you don't know what you're doing and you don't really want to learn, you've got an option now, right? That's a motivation in itself.
Yeah.
So that's with Paragon, by the way. I was looking up the other day. There's a quite 5.8% cash ISA. So that surely has to be some kind of motivation. Just thinking about that you're going to lose your money, or do you want it to just wither away, or do you want it to start growing?
Yeah.
But the first thing is I would say, to get motivated, stay motivated. Think about your levels of comfort / discomfort around your money habits, around your thoughts and your feelings around money. That's step one.
Mm-hmm.
And if you mark them on a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 you feel absolutely brilliant with your relationship and what you're doing with your money, and 0 you feel rubbish. If it's anything less than a 10 or an 8 or whatever, then you've got room for maneuver. And then try and find, rather than just walk into something and get overwhelmed with it, or feel that you have to conquer the world on day one, think about making it exciting. Think about what you'd really like to do and start really small. One more thing, for those people who do roundups, right? Do you know this roundup? So you go into a shop and you buy a cup of coffee for £3.60 and it puts 40p into this roundup pot.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the month, you go, oh, isn't that amazing? I've got 8, and the average roundup, I think, is £8. Okay. And you're all terribly pleased with yourself.
Yeah.
And you go, oh, isn't that amazing? I've got £8. Come on, it's lazy. Why don't you have a look at how much you've been getting in your roundup pot each month, roughly, or set it at £8, which is the average, and move that money with a direct debit or a standing order into an interest paying savings account, and then add to it every month. Go, right, every month I'm going to up it by a couple of quid or something, so that you're motivating yourself to do more.
Yeah, this turned into like top tips with Fanny session, didn't it? I love that 72 thing, because I've just worked out, look, if at 0.5% it takes you 144 years to double your money. No, now they're at 5%. Huh?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. And now it's 14.
144. Now it's 14. So it's like exactly. 10 times faster now than it was.
Exactly.
So,
And exactly, and this is the thing about credit cards as well. You
yeah.
pay the minute you got 3 grand on a credit card.
Mm,
This is going up back with an interest rate of about 21%.
mm,
If you pay the minimum payment every month, it's going to take you about 26 years and 9 months to pay off.
yeah.
If you fix that monthly payment, let's say £100, which is as against about 70, it'll take you about 5 years.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you've saved yourself over 20 years of
Yeah.
that and a
Yeah.
lot of interest.
Well, it's half an hour have gone by, and sadly we've got to bring this
Sorry,
to an
I
end.
got
But
on
I'm
one.
definitely motivated by lots of what you said, because I think there's sometimes the simplest things put things in perspective, and the power of 72. That's brilliant. I love that. Definitely going
You
to be
like that?
bringing it up. Yeah, yeah, and yeah. That's what you need sometimes, is to sort of relate to things, don't you? Because sometimes these things are just too broad and too sort of big to even contemplate. But when you can distill it down into one sort of thing with regards to interest rates and the 72 thing and all that, it's really useful. Thank you for sharing. Thank you very much for that. So, Fanny, we
Yeah.
have gone past the hour, the 30
The
minutes that we
bewitching
normally
hour
go by.
of
I was going to say
well,
that, but it's been really useful. I was going to say, well, I'm not going to add any more to it, but I think that it's a good topic with regards to, what does motivate us to take action, and when we know that there's something that really sort of drives us, then we've got to sort of tap into that, because that's what's going to keep us going. That's what's going to really make us make those things that we want to do into habits, and those habits then become part of what we are. And then once they're part of us, then there's no real sort of stopping us. It's like anything with regards to that. It's
yeah.
the hardest bit is always the starting, because
And then
you
just be
can't
kind to yourself. Be
be kind.
kind to
Yeah.
yourself that you've done something. It might not be everything, but it's something.
Brilliant.
Enjoy the journey.
Absolutely. Right, so if you'd like to find out more about Fanny, then you'll see at the end of the show, her website is there.
Yeah.
Check it out. Check out all that's there, free stuff. You can find out your money habits and give yourself a test. What's the test you do? The money quiz?
Money type quiz.
Money type quiz, that's on our website.
Yeah.
So find out about that. And obviously, if anything that you want to find out more about with regards to what Fanny does with money, keep yourself motivated by money and how you can be better with money, then obviously you need to book in and have a chat with Fanny as soon as possible. So that's that for this episode. If you've got anything to say, any comments about what we've been talking about with regards to your attitude to money, and how you have got some tips that you use, or actually make some comments on what you've learned today, that will be brilliant. Then put them in the comments and we'd love to hear from you. And if you've got any topics that you'd like us to discuss with regards to things that are maybe linked to motivation or money, then please get in touch and we'll explore those as well. So thanks Fanny, really enjoyed today's episode, and until next time we'll bid you farewell, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, take care.